I have always been utterly convinced, deep in my bones, that I truly understood the sea. Its moods, its whispers, its unforgiving depths. With 26 grueling years of sailing etched into my soul, 5 epic circumnavigations around this vast, spinning globe that tested every fiber of my being, and an endless parade of heart-pounding regattas where the wind howled like a banshee and the waves clawed at my vessel, I harbored this illusion of mastery, this false sense of dominion over the untamable. But oh, how wrong I was. Now, in the quiet aftermath of survival, I see the brutal truth. We humans never truly hold power over the ocean. No, we are nothing more than fleeting visitors, humble transients skimming its infinite, restless surface. And when that colossal beast decides to roar, to flex its ancient muscles and reveal its primal fury, all that's left for us is to drop to our knees in desperate prayer, hoping against hope for mercy. My name is Timur Savliev, and what follows is the raw, gut-wrenching story of how I endured an unimaginable 189 days in utter isolation, adrift in the merciless expanse of the Pacific Ocean. It all began when my beloved yacht, the Sea Wanderer, a vessel that had become an extension of my very self, was torn asunder by a ferocious storm, a cataclysmic tempest that erupted out of nowhere, so sudden and savage that even the sharp-eyed meteorologists, with all their satellites and charts, failed to foresee or record its wrath. I was 42 years old, in the prime of what I thought was my adventurous life, when I embarked on what was supposed to be my 6th triumphant journey around the world. After spending 2 long, monotonous decades toiling away as an engineer in the cold, industrial heart of Novosibirsk, where days blurred into nights under fluorescent lights and the hum of machinery, I finally mustered the courage to shatter that mundane existence and chase the dream that had burned in my chest since boyhood, to surrender myself completely to the call of the sea, to let its rhythms dictate my fate. I sold my modest apartment, the walls of which had witnessed my quiet frustrations and unspoken longings, and poured every last ruble of my hard-earned savings into acquiring and customizing the Sea Wanderer. She was a magnificent 12-meter sailing yacht, sleek and resilient, and I rebuilt parts of her with my own calloused hands, infusing her with my sweat and determination. Equipped to the brim with modern marvels, an autopilot that steered like a loyal companion, advanced water desalination systems to quench my thirst from the salty brine, solar panels that harnessed the sun's relentless energy, satellite communication links to bridge the void between me and the world, and cutting-edge navigation equipment that promised precision in the chaos. She felt invincible. On that fateful March 14th, with a mix of exhilaration and a twinge of farewell to the land, I cast off from the bustling port of Vladivostok, the salty air filling my lungs like a promise of freedom. The plan was deceptively simple, a roadmap etched in my mind. Traverse the vast, unpredictable Pacific Ocean all the way to the Panama Canal, then slip into the Atlantic's embrace, skirt the rugged coasts of Africa with its ancient mysteries, and finally loop back through the Indian Ocean's warm currents. A grand odyssey designed to span 2 full years, filled with solitude, self-discovery, and the raw thrill of the unknown. Those initial 3 weeks, they were nothing short of blissful perfection. The weather gods smiled upon me, sending gentle breezes that filled my sails without a hint of malice. The Sea Wanderer performed flawlessly, gliding through the waves like a graceful dancer, proving every modification I'd made was worth the effort. I basked in the profound solitude, the kind that wraps around you like a comforting cloak, allowing your thoughts to roam free without the distractions of civilization. Every single day, I captured my reflections on video, pouring out my soul to the lens, and dutifully transmitted my coordinates to friends and family back home via the satellite tracker, little digital lifelines that assured them I was still out there, alive and thriving. My final message flickered out into the ether on April 7th, when I found myself positioned roughly 1,300 nautical miles to the east of Japan's jagged shores. That day dawned like so many before it, ordinary in its serenity. I stirred awake at the first blush of dawn, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and methodically checked my course and the latest weather reports. The meteorological summary painted a picture of tranquility. Moderate winds clocking in at 5 to 6 knots, nothing that screamed danger or demanded immediate action. I prepared a simple breakfast, oatmeal simmered on my compact gas stove, steaming and hearty, and savored a cup of strong coffee, leaning against the rail as the sun climbed lazily over the horizon, painting the water in hues of gold and pink. In that peaceful instant, a profound sense of contentment washed over me, and I remember whispering to myself, "This, right here. This is what true happiness feels like," my voice lost in the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. But by midday, subtle omens began to creep in, shattering the idyll. I noticed the waves transforming, their rhythm quickening, becoming more insistent, crowned with frothy, foaming crests that hinted at unrest below. The barometer, that faithful sentinel of atmospheric moods, started its ominous plunge, a silent alarm bell ringing in my experienced mind, the unmistakable harbinger of an impending storm. Yet even then, I didn't succumb to panic. Why would I? Over the course of my seafaring life, I had stared down countless tempests in the open ocean, each one a battle that honed my skills and fortified my resolve. With practiced efficiency, I reefed the sails to reduce their area, minimizing the wind's grip, and secured every loose item on deck and below, lashing them down with ropes that bit into my palms. I braced myself for what I assumed would be just another bumpy night, a rite of passage for any true sailor. Oh, how naive that assumption proved to be. What descended upon me that evening was no mere storm. It was a colossal, raging monster, spawned from the violent clash of two massive atmospheric fronts, a meteorological nightmare that burst forth without warning, evading even the vigilant eyes of weather experts who scan the skies from afar. In the span of a mere half-hour, the wind howled from a whisper to a scream, surging to 25 knots, then barreling onward to 35, whipping the sea into a frenzy. Soon, I abandoned all attempts to monitor the anemometer's frantic readings. Survival demanded every ounce of my focus, every shred of my strength. The waves swelled to terrifying heights, looming like the walls of three-story buildings, dark and implacable. The sea wanderer, my faithful steed, would crest their peaks in a dizzying ascent, only to plummet into the yawning troughs below, each crash sending shockwaves through her frame, threatening to shatter her like fragile glass. With every brutal impact as the bow slammed into another liquid barrier, the entire yacht trembled violently, groaning in protest, and in those heart-stopping moments, I was certain she would disintegrate beneath me. Then came the dreaded sound, a sharp, soul-rending crack that pierced the chaos. The first mast, strained beyond endurance, snapped clean at its base, its splintered remains dangling precariously over the side, entangled with shredded sails and tangled rigging, now a deadly anchor that could drag us under or flip us over in an instant. Adrenaline surged through my veins like fire as I lunged onto the deck, knife in hand, determined to sever the lines and cast off this perilous wreckage before it sealed our fate. The wind assaulted my face with savage force, feeling as if it were peeling away layers of skin, while stinging salty spray blinded my eyes, turning the world into a blurred nightmare. The deck bucked and pitched wildly beneath me, slick with foam and seawater, forcing me to crawl on hands and knees, desperately clutching at rails and fittings, my fingers numb and slipping as I fought to stay aboard. At last, I reached the mangled mast debris, my breath ragged, and began hacking at the first taut rope with trembling hands. But in that vulnerable instant, a gigantic rogue wave, a towering behemoth of water, crashed over me without mercy, sweeping me overboard into the churning abyss. Terror gripped my heart as the cold ocean enveloped me. But salvation came in the form of my safety harness, the lifeline tethered to my vest that yanked me back from the brink of oblivion. The yacht heeled over to a perilous 90 degrees, teetering on the edge of capsizing, and for what felt like an eternity of suspended agony, I dangled there, convinced this was the end, my life flashing in fragmented memories. By some divine miracle, she righted herself with a shuddering groan, and with every last reserve of strength, I clawed my way back onto the deck, gasping for air, my body battered but unbroken. The next 2 hours blurred into a feverish blur of exertion. I labored with a ferocity I didn't know I possessed, methodically cutting away the remnants of the first mast and desperately reinforcing the second. My hands sliced open by jagged metal and abrasive ropes, blood mixing with salt water in a stinging symphony of pain. Yet, the adrenaline coursing through me dulled the agony, turning it into fuel for my survival. Exhausted, I finally staggered back into the cabin, only to confront a new horror. Water was infiltrating through multiple fissures in the hull, insidious leaks that turned the interior into a flooding trap. The bilge pumps whirred valiantly but were overwhelmed, straining against the relentless influx. The radio equipment lay in ruins, smashed and silent. The satellite phone was utterly useless, its antenna torn away along with chunks of the superstructure in the storm's fury. Then, at the stroke of 3 a.m., the final catastrophe unfolded in a symphony of destruction. An enormous wave, soaring at least 15 meters high like a mythical leviathan rising from the depths, slammed into the yacht's broadside with apocalyptic force. I heard the horrifying, bone-chilling crack of the hull splintering apart, and in that instant, a wave of despair crashed over me. I knew with chilling certainty that this was the death knell for my vessel. The Sea Wanderer was fracturing into pieces, her once sturdy form yielding to the ocean's wrath. Time compressed into a frantic scramble. I had less than 5 precious minutes to salvage what I could from the chaos. With shaking hands, I gathered the bare essentials for survival. The emergency radio beacon that could summon help from afar, the inflatable life raft that promised a fragile sanctuary, my dwindling reserves of fresh water in sealed containers, a handful of canned foods to stave off starvation, a sharp knife for utility and defense, a lighter to kindle fire in desperation, a compass to guide my aimless drift, a basic first aid kit to mend my wounds, and a waterproof pouch safeguarding my documents, passports to a world that now felt impossibly distant. As the icy water surged up to my knees, turning the cabin into a sinking tomb, I activated the raft's inflation mechanism with a hiss of compressed air and clambered out through the roof hatch, leaving behind the only home I had known on these waves. The last, heartbreaking image seared into my mind was the Sea Wanderer. My pride, my sanctuary, the embodiment of my dreams. Slowly, inexorably submerging into the frothing turmoil, her lights flickering out like dying stars. A profound piece of my soul perished with her in that dark, stormy night, leaving me hollow and adrift in more ways than one. Now, confined to the life raft, I secured it to my body with trembling fingers and triggered the emergency beacon. Its faint beeps a fragile thread of hope piercing the night, praying that somewhere, in some distant control room, my distress signal would light up a screen and mobilize rescuers. In those initial, disoriented moments, I clung to the belief that salvation was imminent. A helicopter whirring overhead or a ship slicing through the waves within a day or two at most. Little did I know, could I even begin to comprehend, that the ensuing 189 days would forge me in the fires of endurance, pushing my body and spirit to the absolute limits, with the vast, indifferent ocean serving as my unyielding jailer, my harsh instructor, and very nearly my eternal grave. As dawn broke, casting a pale, hesitant light over the scene, a fragile calm descended. The storm, that raging demon, retreated as swiftly as it had assaulted, leaving behind swells that were heavy and rolling but no longer laced with lethal intent. My predicament crystallized before me in its stark, terrifying clarity. I was utterly alone in the heart of the Pacific, bobbing in a compact life raft no larger than 3 by 2 meters, my only link to the outside world, the beacon whose reliability I could only pray for. That first day dissolved into a hazy stupor of shock and numbness. The trauma of the shipwreck, combined with the bone-deep exhaustion from my desperate battle against the elements, plunged me into a profound apathy, a mental fog where emotions felt distant and muted. I moved through the motions like an automaton, meticulously inspecting the raft for any signs of damage or deflation, taking stock of my pitiful inventory with a detached precision, and dabbing antiseptic from the first aid kit onto my raw, bleeding cuts, wincing at the sting but feeling it as if from afar. My water supply totaled 20 liters, portioned out in sturdy 4- and 5-liter canisters. Precious liquid gold that I knew must be guarded jealously. The canned provisions, mostly hearty stews and preserved fish, were calculated to sustain me for perhaps 2 weeks if I rationed them with iron discipline, denying myself the comfort of full meals. My survival arsenal included a versatile multi-tool with a sharp knife for cutting and crafting, a lighter that could spark life-saving flames if I found fuel, basic fishing gear from the raft's emergency kit, hooks, lines, and lures that promise sustenance from the sea, a reliable compass to orient myself in the featureless blue, a small mirror for flashing signals to distant horizons, the essential first aid kit with bandages and ointments, and my life jacket equipped with a shrill whistle and reflective strips that could catch the eye of search planes. The raft itself, a vibrant orange beacon against the azure, featured an inflatable canopy to shield me from the sun's scorching gaze and the rain's relentless patter. Its interior boasted an insulated floor that trapped body heat, a barrier against the ocean's chilling grasp, and perimeter ropes for clinging to in case of overturning. a grim possibility that haunted my thoughts. With a cold, analytical eye honed by years at sea, I evaluated my chances, forcing myself to confront the odds without illusion. The beacon should be broadcasting my position to satellites overhead, alerting international rescue teams to my plight. I wasn't stranded in the most desolate reaches of the ocean, but neither was I near the busy shipping lanes where vessels crisscross like highways. If fortune favored me, help could arrive in mere days, a chopper's blades thumping the air or a freighter's horn blasting through the silence. Yet, as the third day dragged on without a single sign, no distant rumble of engines, no speck on the horizon, reality sank in like a lead weight. This was far more dire than I'd allowed myself to admit. Perhaps the beacon had malfunctioned in the chaos, its electronics fried by salt water. Maybe its signal was lost in the ether, unheard amid global noise, or worse, search efforts were hampered by my constant drift, carried by invisible currents. Whatever the cause, the skies remained empty, the sea silent. By the fourth day, a shift occurred within me, a spark of resolve igniting amidst the despair. I could no longer afford the luxury of passive waiting. I had to seize control, to wage an active war for my life. Priority 1: water conservation. I imposed a draconian regimen, limiting myself to a scant quarter-liter in the morning and another at dusk. Each sip savored like nectar, my throat parched and begging for more. Food followed suit, one meager portion per day, just enough to quiet the gnawing hunger without depleting stocks. I ingeniously rigged the canopy to capture rainwater, funneling precious drops into empty containers during squalls, turning nature's fury into my ally. The fifth day hurled a new torment my way, the blistering agony of sunburn. Even under the canopy's shade, the sun's ultraviolet rays bounced off the water's mirror-like surface, assaulting my exposed skin with invisible fire. My face, neck, and hands erupted in angry red blotches, hot and throbbing, soon peeling in painful sheets that left raw flesh vulnerable. The antiseptic cream from the kit provided fleeting relief, but it was ill-suited for such wounds, leaving me to grit my teeth through the discomfort. As the first week drew to a close, I forged a daily routine, a lifeline for my fraying mind. Mornings began with vigilant raft inspections, probing for leaks or where that could spell doom. Then came fishing attempts, a frustrating endeavor that proved far more challenging than I'd imagined in my pre-storm fantasies. The rudimentary rod from the kit was clumsy, and my improvised lures, bits of cloth or shiny debris, failed to entice the elusive fish below. Midday hours were spent huddled in shade, shielding myself from the sun's merciless blaze, where I would reflect deeply, maintaining a mental diary by narrating aloud the day's trials, my flickering plans, and the embers of hope that refused to die, all to ward off the encroaching shadows of madness and despair. Evenings mirrored mornings. More futile fishing casts, eyes scanning the endless horizon for any sign of salvation. A sail, a smoke plume, anything, and preparations for the long, dark night ahead. Those nights were the cruelest ordeal, wrapping me in bone-chilling cold and profound loneliness. The ocean's mysterious sounds, distant splashes, eerie creaks, amplifying my isolation, while turbulent thoughts swirled like the waves outside. On the 10th day, triumph pierced the monotony. I hooked my first fish, a modest tuna that ventured too near in a moment of carelessness. The rush of victory was electric, rejuvenating my weary body and rekindling a flame of optimism that had dimmed. With the multi-tool, I dissected it meticulously, forcing down half raw despite the slimy texture and metallic tang that turned my stomach, while the remainder I sliced into thin strips and laid out to dry under the sun's heat, creating a vital stockpile against future hunger. The 12th day brought a torrential tropical downpour, a double-edged sword. I managed to harvest nearly 10 liters of fresh water, a bounty that lifted my spirits and bolstered my reserves. But the storm itself was a brutal test. The raft pitched and yawed on the heaving seas, inducing waves of nauseating seasickness, while frigid water seeped through canopy seams, soaking me to the core and triggering uncontrollable shivers that racked my frame. As the second week faded, my canned supplies dwindled alarmingly, despite my stringent economies, forcing me to confront the specter of true starvation. My skin was encrusted with a gritty salt layer, my hair matted into unkempt knots, my clothes perpetually damp and reeking of the sea. Worse still, Persistent moisture bred chafing and fungal infections in folds of skin constantly pressed against the raft's wet surface, adding layers of itching torment to my physical woes. But eclipsing even these bodily afflictions was the psychological siege. The unchanging blue panorama that stretched to infinity, the deafening absence of human voices, the crushing uncertainty of what tomorrow might bring, or if there would be a tomorrow at all. This mental onslaught threatened to unravel me. So I countered with self-dialogue, reciting beloved poems and songs from memory, weaving tales from my past life allowed to fill the void and anchor my sanity amid the isolation. On the 18th day, disaster struck with terrifying suddenness. Amid another nocturnal storm's fury, the raft capsized, flipping like a leaf in the wind. I was hurled into the icy water, tethered to the inverted hull, panic exploding in my chest as I flailed in the darkness, fearing the loss of everything: supplies, hope, life itself. Miraculously, most gear was lash secure, and sealed containers bobbed intact. It took nearly an hour of Herculean effort, my muscles screaming in protest, to right the raft and haul myself inside, drenched, hypothermic, and shaken to my core. That night became a turning point, a visceral reminder of life's razor-thin margin, how a single wave could snuff it out in an instant. By the third week's end, the last cans were gone, my survival now wholly dependent on my fishing prowess and the whims of rain clouds. I refined my tackle, incorporating gleaming fragments from empty cans as alluring lures, and persistence paid off with occasional catches. Hours melted away in patient vigil, line in hand, waiting for that telltale tug. One morning, a shadowy form beneath the raft drew my gaze. A small school of fish, lured by the algae blooming on the underside. This revelation revolutionized my approach. I began dangling lines directly below, transforming the raft into a floating fishing platform. As the first month of drift concluded, I had adapted to this aquatic exile as best a human could, my body transforming into a lean, sinewy machine, skin bronzed and leathery from relentless sun and salt. I mastered weather omens through cloud formations and the erratic flights of seabirds that sporadically graced my solitude. Above all, I refused to yield, greeting each dawn with the mantra, uttered through cracked lips: today might be the day rescue comes. That persistent, often deceptive hope was my anchor, propelling me through the endless ordeal. Entering the second month, a profound realization dawned. Mere survival wasn't enough. I needed to learn to truly exist within the ocean's embrace, balancing the scales of depletion and renewal for water, food, energy, and that most fragile commodity, hope. Water became my obsession, a constant battle against dehydration's insidious creep. I engineered a sophisticated collection system, utilizing the canopy's fabric and improvised gutters fashioned from sliced plastic bottles to channel every drop. In this Pacific realm, rains arrived frequently but capriciously, sometimes in ceaseless deluges that filled my vessels to overflowing, other times as teasing sprinkles that mocked my thirst. On still, windless days, I devised a method to harvest condensation, draping a plastic bag overnight to capture morning dew, yielding only a few meager swallows but precious nonetheless in my dire calculus. Nutrition posed an equally relentless challenge. Fishing evolved into my primary vocation, hours devoted to the pursuit. I enhanced my rigs with threads unraveled from tattered clothing and hooks bent from life jacket wire, honing my skills to distinguish safe, edible species from those laced with toxins that could spell agony or death. One serendipitous night, a flying fish hurled itself into the raft, a gift from the sea that I seized with gratitude, fresh, protein-packed flesh that invigorated my fading strength. I became adept at utilizing every part, devouring the meat, baiting with innards for future catches, and fashioning bones into needles for mending clothes and patching the raft. Seabirds, those fleeting visitors, turned into opportunistic prey. Perching on the edge, they tempted me, and twice I succeeded in snaring one, harvesting not just sustenance but feathers for crafting more effective lures. Surprisingly, seaweed emerged as a vital forage. Initially viewed with suspicion, hunger drove me to experiment, enduring painful cramps from trial errors until I identified harmless varieties that provided essential nutrients. The raft, once a confining cage that amplified my claustrophobia, morphed into a versatile domain. I partitioned it mentally: a cozy sleeping nook, a makeshift kitchen for filleting catches, a workshop for tool improvisation and repairs, and an elevated vantage for scanning the endless vista of sea and sky. I customized the canopy with vents and adjustable flaps, sealable against storms, which alleviated stifling humidity and made the tropical heat marginally bearable. Psychological resilience proved as crucial as physical endurance. I enforced a rigid timetable to impose order on chaos. Morning gear checks and fishing, midday respite with horizon vigil, evening hunts and night safeguards. To combat time's disorienting blur, I carved a primitive calendar on a canister, notching each sunset and vocalizing the date aloud. A ritual that tethered me to the calendar of the world beyond. The ocean, initially a malevolent adversary, gradually unveiled its secrets, allowing me to attune to its pulses and whims. I predicted squalls from cloud shapes and wave patterns, timed fishing to coincide with marine cycles. One enchanted night, I witnessed bioluminescence, a mesmerizing glow illuminating the water in ethereal blue with every ripple, a natural spectacle so captivating that, for a blessed moment, I forgot my suffering and simply marveled at the universe's beauty. Midway through the second month, the raft's integrity faltered under cumulative assault. Sun, salt, and ceaseless motion spawned microcracks, air hissing out like a slow death sentence. I patched desperately with medical tape and scavenged plastics, a stopgap measure I knew wouldn't last. Daily pumping sessions with the manual device sapped my energy, but they were non-negotiable for buoyancy. My physical decline accelerated, 20 kilograms shed, muscles wasting from confinement and nutrient scarcity, skin marred by festering salt ulcers that resisted healing, teeth throbbing from incipient scurvy. I combated it by chewing vitamin-rich seaweed, delaying but not halting the decay. In my lowest ebbs, recollections of loved ones buoyed me. No photos survived the wreck, but I conjured their images. My sister Marina's encouraging smile, nephew Kostia's youthful enthusiasm for sailing, friend Veniamin's shared adventures on Lake Baikal, infusing me with renewed vigor amid exhaustion. Late in the month, another tempest assailed me, but forearmed with experience, I secured everything, bolstering the canopy. It raged for nearly a day, tossing me like debris, yet I emerged unscathed, a testament to my growing resilience. Post-storm, my drift veered southeast, signaling a new current, potentially steering toward salvation or deeper peril. I intensified stargazing, using constellations as my sole navigation, noting Polaris's absence as I crossed into the southern hemisphere, orienting by the Southern Cross to gauge my wandering path. The third month commenced with a wondrous encounter that pierced my isolation. A peculiar scraping roused me at dawn. Peering out, I beheld a curious young dolphin rubbing against the raft, exploring this odd intruder in its domain. Soon, companions joined, a playful pod encircling me, their leaps and dives a symphony of life. Their presence flooded me with an indescribable joy, banishing the loneliness that had gnawed at my soul. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I sensed companionship in this boundless blue desert. They lingered through the day, then vanished as mysteriously as they appeared, but the memory lingered like a bomb. Remarkably, they returned every few days, becoming anticipated visitors. I spoke to them as confidants, perhaps a sign of creeping madness, yet these interactions anchored me against the abyss of despair. By mid-third month, I attained a tenuous equilibrium, my routines a shield against breakdown. But challenges persisted. Hydration's constant vigilance, fishing's unpredictable yields, the raft's deteriorating state demanding ceaseless maintenance. Emotional lows struck hard, days of unrelenting sun baking me alive, nights of hypothermia's chill. But I pressed on, drawing strength from inner reserves I never knew existed. As months blurred, the raft's decay accelerated, patches failing, air chambers sagging. One storm-tossed night, a puncture flooded the interior. Bailing proved futile, the end neared. Dawn revealed salvation. Floating foam debris, buoyant enough for one man. I transferred gear, bidding a sorrowful farewell to my faithful raft after nearly 6 months. The new platform was precarious, but it floated, allowing adaptation and perseverance. Day 180 ignited hope. Seabirds' directional flights suggested land southeast. Monitoring winds and currents, I fashioned a crude sail from paddle fragment and plastic, enabling rudimentary steering toward potential shore. Days of strained anticipation followed, eyes straining for signs. On day 187, aquatic shifts, novel fish, abundant vegetation, hinted at proximity to land. Evening brought hazy silhouettes on the horizon, confirmed at dawn as solid earth. Ecstasy overwhelmed me. Tears, laughter, shouts of thanks to the ocean for mercy. After 188 days, land beckoned, but miles remained, currents threatening detour. Maneuvering all day, I closed in, discerning foliage and cliffs, yet drift pulled aside. In desperation, I tied a buoying canister and swam, muscles protesting, each stroke a battle against surrender. Time dissolved in effort. A favorable current aided, feet finally touching sand. Crawling ashore, I collapsed, unconscious from joy and fatigue. Awakening to sunrise on palms and rocks, alive on terra firma after 189 days. My ordeal's end, a new beginning's dawn. First hours ashore unfolded in dreamlike disorientation. Solid ground felt alien after oceanic sway. I wobbled like a fledgling. The island, small yet vast to my confined senses, offered exploration. Fresh water from a stream quenched carefully, mindful of rehydration risks. Foraging yielded coconuts, bananas, berries, tested cautiously. They tasted divine after raw fare. A leaf shelter provided rest, emotions swirling. Relief mingled with ocean nostalgia. Second day, coastal survey for habitation signs. Discovery, a derelict fisher's hut, stocked with tackle, pots, matches, transformed prospects. Fire meant cooked meals, signals, the hut, home. Days focused on recovery. Balanced eating, wound healing, weight gain. Nightmares persisted, reliving drifts. Self-talk continued, adapting to stillness. Mental journaling by firelight structured thoughts. 10th day, peak signal fire built, observation post established for ship watches. Weeks passed improving life, woven baskets, stone sandals. 17th day, horizon smoke signaled a trawler. Lighting fire, waving flags, shouting. I waited in agony, turned, approaching. Euphoria tempered by re-entry fear. Communication, societal return. Faces aboard astonished. My raspy tale evoked awe. Captain Makoa, reverent, offered passage. Boarding weekly, hot food, clothes, medical check. Overwhelming kindness. To Tahiti in 3 days, consulate contact planned. Adaptation aboard, gradual talks, sharing saga evenings. Tahiti site panicked. Detoured to Moria village for calm. Warm welcome, bungalow recovery. Meals, fitness, social easing. Consulate aid, docs, family call. Tears with Marina, presumed dead. Media frenzy, interviews, global buzz. Month later, Russia return. Emotional airport reunion, press overwhelm. Adaptation struggles. Luxuries grateful, yet alienation from trivialities. Therapy process trauma. Book written therapeutically, bestseller inspiring others. Founded Sailor Aid Fund, lectured resilience. See return after 2 years with respect. Recalling 189 days now with awe, gratitude, ocean teacher of life's value.
Distant dolphin fin?
Belief in reunion in blue home.